This Week and Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience at GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Game All Night.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Game All Night. I have Mr. Paul Grogan in the green room. He is probably in there, like, making rules up about something that's laying around, like, that involves M&Ms and candy stand. I think we can't leave him alone in there too long. So, anyway, you poured us a lovely drink this evening. I went dark. It's getting cooler, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're making sure you branch out a little bit. You're the IPA guy tonight. I'm drinking the IPA, but you have a Russian Imperial Stout here from Hailstorm Brewing, coming out of Illinois. This guy's coming in at about 10.6 now. Where are you normally? I know you're not normally a Imperial Stout guy. How's this one sitting for you?
I can definitely tell it's 10%. It's got some alcohol right up front. You can kind of get that. But it's got like big coffee, like dark chocolate flavors in there that I like. So, I like a stout every now and then because, it's like a warm hug. And I'm a big fan of like black IPAs and stuff. So I like the toastier malts and things that they bring some fun stuff to the party.
Yeah. There's a lot of times getting that little roasty malt, just exactly what you need. And, we're getting into the season, so. Meanwhile, I'm doing a New England IPA. I'm clinging still to summer with the Tears of Green from Captain Lawrence out of New York. I've loved virtually everything Captain Lawrence has done. For a while, they were hard to get a hold of around here. I used to bring them back from my Manhattan trips. But lately, I'm able to pick them up at local distributors, and this one is, it's got a ton of that juiciness you're looking for, real hazy. It's a lovely.
Yeah, it almost looks like it's unfiltered and tasty and just everything I like. So I'll have to try a little bit. Be sure you save me some. That looks
I have no fear.
All right. Well, let's not leave him in the green room any longer. Let's check in on our guest.
Hi, Chris. Yes, this evening I actually have, and this wasn't planned, but I've got homemade elderflower cordial with sparkling water. So every year, me and my partner make elderflower cordial. We go out, we pick the elderflowers, we make about 8 bottles of it, freeze them in the outside freezer, and then kind of every so often take one out and go through it. So yeah, homemade elderflower.
Homemade elderflower. So this I assume for those non-native speakers, cordial is actually cordial, as we like to say. We'll get into the language barrier later.
We will.
How do you actually make something like that?
So you need, if you're making one batch, it's 25. We always make 2. So it's 50 elderflowers. And there are various points around here locally where we can go out and pick them. You add them into a big tub. You add a whole load of water. You add some lemons and 3 pounds of sugar.
3
it's
pounds.
A lot of sugar, a huge amount of sugar. You basically leave it for a few days. You keep stirring it, and then after that, you then filter it through like a funnel with the coffee filter in and everything else, just to get rid of all of the bits and the bugs and everything else. Then we pour it into bottles and freeze it. So it's fairly easy to make, and it's just one of those things that traditionally we've done every year.
So am I to assume that there's a fermentation process going on and it's converting the sugars to alcohol? So
not alcohol.
Oh, no?
No, this is not alcoholic at all. It is just a cordial.
Okay.
Is that pronounced correctly?
Well, for us it is, but
Yeah, no, it's a non-alcoholic drink, and it's great in the summer. But also, and I've discovered this recently, because I don't really drink tea or coffee, but occasionally I'll get like really cold in an evening.
Right.
So only last week, this is hot news, I decided to basically put some with some hot water in a cup and tried it, and it was amazing. So I now have my hot drink when I'm cold in an evening and I don't want to bother turning the heating on. It's basically elderflower cordial mixed with hot water, and it's great. Yeah.
So like a elderflower tea almost.
Yeah. If anybody wants the recipe, drop me a message and let me know. It's yeah.
So obviously you are not local to me in any means, although, you know, you could be closer than some, you know, territories in the U.S.
Yeah.
Where exactly are you located?
So I'm based over in England, and specifically I'm in the southwest of England. Because whenever you say you're from England, people go, "Oh, you're near London." It's like, no. I'm probably about 3 hours drive away from London. So if you look at a map of England, right down in the southwest, there's a bit sticking out. I'm on that sticky outy bit. Not all the way down there, but I'm in the southwest of England.
So closer
which
to
is
the
known
channel.
For, yeah. I mean, the southwest of England is known for sort of rolling hills and lots of green countryside. And I don't know if this is a true story or not, but I'm going to say it as if it is. Tolkien's inspiration for the Shire is actually the county where I live in Devon. And you can see that when you look across at some of the country, it's very much the rolling hills and it's all green and everything. So it's a very nice part of the country. A lot of people come down to the southwest for their like summer holidays or weekend breaks or things like that.
Interesting. So it's not New Zealand as we're led to believe then, you know.
No.
It's just
I think
where
the weather's
film it.
possibly similar. Oh yeah, Lord of the Rings, yes. Yeah, I didn't get that reference then.
Sorry. So are there anybody's running around with like, do they have any hobbit homes built there, or do people actually take that into account living down there, or is it we don't care?
No, it's not a thing. It's just something I read, you know, like 10, 20 years ago, that Tolkien's inspiration for the Shire was down in Devon. As I say, I don't know if it's true or not, but let's say it is true. There you go.
Yeah, you think the Devonshire, like, you know, board of tourism would jump on that if that were, you know, a thing that
was true.
if they wanted to get involved.
Yeah. Well, after the show, we will look it up on Wikipedia or Google. Not that that's true, but you know.
Well, it's on the internet. It's got to be true.
It's on the internet, therefore it's true. Yeah.
So you run a channel called Gaming Rules, and you've been around. My goodness, you've been around quite a while doing this, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been around in the gaming hobby since the 80s. You know, I've been a gamer since the 80s. I've been a part of the board gaming community. I've been going to Essenspiel for 20 years. So yeah, I've been around for quite a while. Gaming Rules started, I can't remember. I think it was officially, it was January 2015 is when I left my full-time job.
Okay.
But actually Gaming Rules was started in 2014, and I was kind of doing it evenings and weekends because I wanted to start the channel and start doing what I was doing basically as an experiment to see if there was going to be anything in it. And then it turns out there was something in it. So officially it was January 2015 when I left my job. So that's 4.5 years that I've been doing it full time. And I've had 2 days holiday in 4.5 years, which is not good.
You never get a holiday when you work for yourself. You know that, right?
No, I was emailing Cosmos at 11 o'clock last night in bed on the laptop, and Vicky's saying to me, she's like, you know, you could do this tomorrow, right? And you're right, when you work for yourself, your brain is just into that mode, which is one of the pitfalls that people warned me about, and I listened to them and then didn't take any of their advice whatsoever. And yeah, if you're watching this at home, don't do what I do. Don't do work-related stuff at 11 o'clock at night when you're in bed when you should be sleeping. It's really not good. But
that's actually really good advice, because I think, you know, and that's true of any home, you know, single small business owner. It's very easy to let it kind of infect every single part of your life, and trying to find a way to compartmentalize that that's got to be the real trick, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also tricky when your job is your hobby and your passion. You know, it's all blended into one. Now, I've got a friend who is an entrepreneur and he runs his own business. He hires an office in the town where he works, and he leaves every day and he gets up and he has breakfast and he gets changed and he goes to his office and does his work and then comes home. Now, he could work from home, and I work from home all the time, but he does that so that when he leaves that office, he switches off his work emails and he's out of work mode. And then when he goes home, he's in home mode. And then there's me, who, as I say, is still sending emails to publishers at 11 o'clock at night in bed, and then starting off at 7 o'clock in the morning doing the same thing again. Yeah, it's all about work-life balance. Everybody finds their own. I have none, and I desperately need to get some. So, yeah.
It's also, I mean, the time differential has to play a huge factor into it as well, because we're 5, 6, and that's the East Coast hours behind you. So, I mean, working late is normal. Like, I mean, 12 o'clock is what?
Yeah.
4 o'clock on the West Coast?
I know. Yeah. And that's, again, it's all about self-discipline. But when a Facebook message pops up from Clay from Capstone Games and said, we've got a green light on the video, and I'm like, oh, exciting. And my brain's in work mode. Yeah. And it's hard to get out. And for him, you're right. It's like, you know, middle of the afternoon or something. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients are European. So when I get up, you know, by the time Vicky's got up, got dressed and gone to work, I've probably had 3 business related conversations before 8 o'clock in the morning, because I get up, I turn the computers on, there's a couple of messages, there's some emails, and then all of a sudden I'm doing those discussions. But that's fine. I mean, I am pretty much once I'm awake, have a quick wash, get some food, and then I'm at work. I don't need, you know, the whole hour in the morning to settle into the day. Once I'm up and working, my brain's active.
Yeah, and the other thing I learned, because in my most recent position, I was able to work from home, I need to actually get dressed. You can't just roll downstairs in loungewear and, you know, sit down and expect to work. Like, you need a trigger sometimes to put yourself on hours.
Yeah, so DHL arrived yesterday with my copy of Irish Gauge, which arrived. DHL arrived at 4:30 in the afternoon. I went downstairs in my dressing gown. And I said to him, because I thought, well, I haven't got time to get dressed. I'll just go downstairs. And I said, I know what you're thinking, but I've been working since 7 o'clock this morning, haven't stopped and haven't had a break. And he's probably thinking, oh, that guy who I keep dropping boxes off to, he never gets out of bed. He's just lying around in bed all day. Whereas the reality is completely the opposite of that. Yeah, so some days, you know, Vicky will get home at 7 or 8 at night and I'm still in my dressing gown. And she says, you haven't taken a break, have you? And again, it's back. I know I should take a break. I know I should get dressed. I should take a half-hour break, go out and do a bit of gardening, go for a walk. And I just don't, because I'm so, you know, in the zone with all of the things that I'm working on because I'm passionate about it. But yeah, that's, yeah. When's our next therapy session, Chris?
I have a couch for a reason, Paul. It's completely fine.
Okay. Yeah. So now that I've got that off my chest.
There you go. No, well, I want to kind of ask a related question. Well, we don't have to push the rabbit hole in the dressing gown issue any further. That's fine. But do you find, like, throughout the course of a day, I feel like there are times when people are definitely going to be more able to work, focus, stay attention, and then at a certain point it goes away. Either, you know, everything gets fuzzy, it's hard to keep control. Do you have a best time of day that works for you? Do you know that yet?
Yeah, probably the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the morning is when I'm probably, you know, at my peak. I'm raring to go and I'm doing it all. I'm still pretty functional in the afternoon, but I was still working. I did like 14 hours yesterday because I've got a few deadlines on at the moment. And I knew months ago that these 3 weeks are going to be extremely busy. So I was working really late last night. And at the end, I just had to give up because I'd been at it for 14 hours. And I was just making little mistakes and I was forgetting to cross-dissolve transition scenes and I was doing things like that. And it was just like, I tell you what, I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, because you're creating more work for yourself than you actually are achieving.
Yeah, you know, you get the video, you render it because you're rushing, you've got to get it up in time, and then you watch it back afterwards and you're like, oh, there's an error, there's an error, there's an error. And you're like, if I'd have just, you know, done that myself before sending it to the publisher saying, here's the video, check it, and then look at it and there's errors in it. And I'm like, look, I know there's errors in it. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not easy because when you're talking rendering video and working on it, it's a time-consuming, tedious process, and you're moving very small things, so it gets very difficult to kind of keep on track, keep focused, especially if you start to get tired. So, yeah. But it's good, you know,
especially
when
if
that
it's a
time
long
is.
video as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I mean, I
doesn't.
can, I can generally feel it now. Um, obviously, if you've not had a good night's sleep the night before, that comes on earlier, and things like that. I generally don't drink tea or coffee. I kind of gave up coffee in
Okay.
'99. I went back on it about 2 years ago, and I've given up 8 times this year already.
Successfully, I'm sure.
Yeah, because last year I was on the coffee and I was on the coffee a lot. This year I've given it up, and then I went back onto it again for a weekend or a few days or whatever, and then went off it again. I've been off it again now for 2 weeks, but I've had one today because I've had 2 bad nights sleep, and I knew that today. I knew I had a lot of work today, and I was going to be talking to you. I didn't want to be struggling to stay awake. So there you go. It's your fault.
It is. It is. I mean, it's late. I get it. But the other thing is too, like trust me, I was the same way. I was up to basically like 3 cups of coffee a day, which are tall ones. So you're talking 16 ounces. So you're talking 6 cups in a day. So the only thing I did was I refused to give myself the coffee first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Like that was what I started. And then I'm like, I will check my emails, and coffee will be a reward when I get something checked off. And it seemed to slow down my drinking. And now I'll have like 1 cup all morning, and then it leaves me free to have a cup in the evening if I want. So,
okay.
Not that I'm giving you advice. I'm just saying it's funny how little habits can change our kind of got to get up and make a cuppa and then go, and then I made a pod, so now I have to finish the pod. It's just like all those little things we do are kind of setting us up for failure, aren't they?
Yeah. Now my plan is to not have another one today, and then I think I'm going to class today as a one-off. And then, but I love the taste of it. That's one of the problems. I love the taste of it, and I know that it's going to perk me up and give me a bit more energy. And I know I want to work hard, so that's kind of I mean, I generally fall back into the coffee when I'm at conventions, because I'm like awake for 20 hours a day, demoing for 16 hours a day, and I kind of need it to get me through it. But then afterwards, you get all of the headaches that come with giving up and everything else. But yeah, when I gave up coffee in 98, health-wise, it was one of the best things I ever did. I mean, I was drinking way too much back then. And after I did, and after I'd got over it, I got ill a lot less. I had a lot more energy. I didn't get tired after meals. I used to fall asleep at work after lunch. So yeah, it was a lot better giving it up. And I want to get back to that now.
I would even argue that it goes even a step further. It's the coffee probably played a part of that. And I think the other part of it probably was you cared about your health and what was going on enough to make this change. So it probably had a ripple effect through everything else too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, before I gave up the coffee, I was drinking way too much. And I was just like, this is crazy. It is, at the end of the day, it's an addictive stimulant. And I was surrounded, I mean, drinking tea and coffee in the UK, certainly tea, is tradition. You go to somebody's house, tea, coffee, and for nearly 20 years, I was the weird one, because I've always been the weird one. But you go around to somebody's house and they go tea, coffee, and everybody goes yeah, coffee, milk, 1 sugar. No, I'll just have a glass of water, thank you. I felt definitely was the outsider in that, but at the end of the day, I just felt, as I say, I felt a lot healthier for giving it up. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you keep it straight? Because I know that you have a lot of work, and it's, if anybody who's spent any time around people who, like yourselves, are making a business out of, creation around the hobby, it's not this nice steady flow all year. It's panic, panic, panic. There's nothing coming out. Nobody needs me. And then all of a sudden there's a tidal wave coming right behind it, because everybody now all of a sudden is scrambling, and Essen's coming or Gen Con's coming, and then there's now a complete flood. So how are you trying to manage all that?
For me, it's all year round. There isn't, for me, any peak points. I think there used to be maybe a few years ago when, a lot of clients 1 to 2 months before Essen would contact me and say, can you have the final look at our rule book? It's going to print, kind of thing. Okay. But now what I do is I'm having to turn down a lot of work. So my regular clients are booking me, well in advance. The work that I'm doing this month was all booked into my calendar, 3-4 months ago. And in fact, the whole of October is now completely booked out. November's all completely booked out. I'm giving myself a little bit of a break in December, but I've got a few jobs booked in, and I'm actually taking bookings for next year. So it is pretty busy all the way through. There isn't, for me, there isn't really any peak points in the year. I could be busy, 70, 80 hours a week every week if I was to accept all of the jobs that I get given. But thankfully, I don't.
Now, you also, you kind of touched on it in there. I think a lot of people may know that you you make instructional videos and you do, your blog and your playthroughs and you do some of those things. But I think another big chunk of your business is also like rules book editing and development and that side, right?
Yeah, that's it. I wear so many hats, and I have this conversation with people all the time, especially publishers. When I'm speaking to publisher and they go, "Oh yeah, Paul Grogan, he's the guy who creates those how to play videos online.
Right.
What he does rule books as well. Yeah. Oh, and hang on a minute, he's also asking us for review copies of games. He's a reviewer as well. Oh, and he does game development as well." And I'm like, yeah, I kind of do, I kind of do all of that. The rule book writing is probably 40% of my business now.
Okay.
I think. It's a lot. I do a lot of rule books. I do some big rule books, some very challenging rule books. I do a lot of Vital Lacerda's rule books, but I do lots of other ones as well. So the rule book writing work. Again, there'll be some people who only know me as a rule book editor and don't realize that I do the other stuff. I wear so many hats. And then people will go to Gen Con and go, "Wait a minute, that's Paul Grogan in the CGE room demoing for CGE. He does that as well." And it's like, I kind of helped set this team up and I put this structure in place. And it's like, oh, right, okay. So I wear lots of different hats. But rulebook writing, I enjoy in some respects, and in other respects, I don't enjoy it. It's not as easy as people think. It is very hard to write a rulebook. Sometimes you're having all sorts of difficult discussions, and you're having to negotiate sometimes with the designer, which I've had a couple of times. Is, "Paul, you've made this rule sound more complicated than it is. It's going to put people off." And I'm like, what I've written is clear, and if you want me to cut it down and make it 4 pages less, I'm going to have to lose some of the examples, which means it's not going to be as clear, and things like that. But of course, the 120 hours that I spent working on the En Marge rulebook, as somebody who creates content online, people don't see that. I could have created 4 instructional videos in the time that I spent working on the En Marge rulebook. But I was also a developer on that game as well, which means multiple play tests, discussions with the designer, feedback, changing things, many 2:00 in the morning discussions with Vital where I was fundamentally disagreeing with what he said. And Vicky said this to me before a few times. She says, "You don't care who you're speaking to, do you?" And I'm like, no, honesty for me and being able to speak my mind. I've had arguments with Vlada Shvatel, who is one of my heroes. I've had arguments with Vital Lacerda because I don't care who you are. My objective is trying to make the best game possible. And if I've got something I feel very strongly about the game, I'm going to put that forward. And if that means a difficult discussion, I will have that difficult discussion. Sometimes I don't win. Sometimes Vital will contact me at 9:00 the next morning and say, "Paul, I've been thinking about what you said, which I spent an hour disagreeing with you yesterday. You're right, and we're going to make the change." And I'm like, yes. So, I was involved in the development of that game. And as you say, I do a lot of work in the background that a lot of people either don't know that I do or don't see that I do.
Right.
It's just, it's just one of those things.
So, definitely, I think talking about those guys, I think, it kind of leads into a whole nother discussion. So I think right now we're going to take a quick break. We're going to pause, and then we're going to come back and talk about what's up with all the heavy games, because I personally love it. So we're going to be right back after this.
Pontifications with Patrick Hillier.
You know, if you boil a funny bone, you make a laughing stock.
Introducing the all-new convenient travel edition of Game All Night. Perfectly sized to fit in your phone or audio device, the Game All Night audio show is now a podcast you can take with you on the go. Featuring the witty repartee you have come to know and love from the video show, but with no distracting pretty sets or guests to get in the way of your listening enjoyment. Now you can play along in the comfort of your car, filling your ear holes with soon-to-be classic episodes and games galore. Find links, news, and episode guides at GameAllNightShow.com. Download yours today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I still have Mr. Paul Grogan, Mr. Gaming Rules, who does everything in the rulebook community. Sir, you mentioned before the break, you deal with a lot of the, let's call them the heavier designers, the Vital Lacerdas, and Vlada Shavato. What is it like trying to make such large, I don't want to say incomprehensible, but, you know, multi-mechanic, multi-direction, maybe even incohesive, because there's lots of little things happening all over the place in a Vital game, for instance. How is it trying to make that both cohesive in a rulebook setting, but also in a video setting? Because that's not got to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously writing the rulebook and also creating, you know, the instructional video on how to play the game, there's a lot of crossover. One of the things that people have said to me is they really, really like my videos because I don't just follow the rulebook. Mm-hmm. And I don't, you know, I'll get the rulebook, I'll learn how to play, and then I will translate that into video form. And the video script on which information I give at the right points and when I should give it is often different from the rulebook, even on rulebooks that I wrote. And that sort of surprises me, because surely the video is just another it's another form of the rulebook. Why would I present the information in a different way? But on you know, sometimes it's best. Certainly on rulebooks which I didn't write, I very often do not follow the structure of the rulebook. I will follow what I believe is the best structure for teaching that game. But yeah, it's for heavy games, you know, where you've got, you know, if we go back to On Mars, for example, I can't remember what the page count is on Mars, but the font is really tiny as well.
Of course.
You're right. It's a lot of rules. So, I mean, it's the same approach as if it was a 4-page rulebook. If it's a 40-page rulebook or a 4-page rulebook, my approach is exactly the same. It's just with a 4-page rulebook, you know, people are not going to get tired by the end of reading it. With a 40-page rulebook, you know, people are going to miss things. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if it's a key rule, it needs to be mentioned, you know, somewhere near the start. And then it needs to be a little call out box on the page where it's relevant to say, remember, you can do this twice a turn or whatever, you know. So spacing important rules out in different points of the rule books, or certainly repeating very, very key bits of information where it's needed. But overall, the structure is still the same. You know, you don't want to go into the 25 different actions that you can do on page 2 of the rulebook.
Right.
Page 2 of the rulebook should be, when it's your turn, you can take one of 25 different actions. We'll explain all of them later on, but you do one of them, and then it's the next player's turn. And then you explain how the round ends, and you explain all of that. And then a few pages later, you'll have, right, actions. Now I'm going to go into all of the different 25 actions. So it's all about, presenting the right information in the right place so that when you're reading it, you don't get absolutely overwhelmed with information before you've even read how you win the game, for example.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think has been the biggest change to your rules videos from when you started doing it to now? I mean, aside from, say, you know, quality of video, microphone, and like editing, what has been kind of, because that's going to come with time, money, and all of a sudden I realize I need a better camera comes up and those things. So what was the biggest change that you've seen over that time?
Well, I've kind of reinvented myself a few times. When I started, so going back to my first ever video, and all of the ones I did, when I first started 5 years ago, I did a lot of digital animations. So full 3D rendered graphics, fancy moving, dynamic shot, the whole lot. And I did rules overview videos. So I didn't do the full rules video. I did 6 to 7 minutes. Here's an overview of the game. Watch this before you go to the rule book, because then it'll give you a really good head start. And then when you read the rule book, it will be a lot easier and it'll make sense. Or watch it after you've played the game. You know, if a friend taught you how to play, go home, watch the 6-minute video and go, wait a minute, Paul said something there that we didn't do in our game. And because they were only 6 minutes, my thinking was more people will watch them and find them useful because it's 6 minutes rather than, 45 minutes, I'm not going to watch that. Or I'll watch it, but I'll skip bits, which is no use when you're watching an instruction video. Sure. So that's when I started. Then, after 18 months or a couple of years, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And what I actually wanted to do was to actually teach people how to play the game with the full rules explanation. I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I started doing that. Now, at which point, bearing in mind it used to take me 70 to 80 hours to create a 7-minute video because I was doing all the 3D digital animations, I went, this is not going to work. So I started using actual real footage. Okay. With some digital overlay. So instead of my finger pointing to something, I would have a digital arrow appear, or I'd draw a box around something, or I'd do that. So I kind of used some of the skills that I learned from the digital stuff, animations. Bearing in mind, I came from a background where I had none of these skills whatsoever. So, you know, I was an IT manager and I was an IT support technician. That's my background for 20 odd years. So when I started doing this, I had to load After Effects. I had to learn all of the software. I had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, self-taught at the whole thing. But yeah, so what you now see on my channel and the last lot of videos that I've done, I've just finished the Letter Jam video. That is live now. I've just finished the Key Market video, which is going to be live hopefully soon. It is me teaching you the full rules on how you play the game using mostly real footage, with the occasional bit of digital animations over the top. Now, those videos are a lot longer, which means they do get less views on average, but I'm more happier with them because I like teaching people how to play games. And the overview videos for me felt like I was only doing half a job.
Right, and it kind of lends itself to being, this is more of a tool to make you just go buy the game versus actually, this is something to instruct you how to play something you already have. So it's actually, if I think about it from a marketing standpoint, it's almost two different things, right? Because you know you're not going to learn the rules from the one.
No. Now the publishers are clearly wanting to see a return on their investment, right? Well, I've got two types of clients. Let's take Czech Games Edition, which a lot of people know. I've worked for them for years. I'm a massive fan of Larger and his work and everything else. CGE was one of my favorite companies in existence before I started working in the industry. So you might think what I say about them is biased, but this is the honest truth. CGE want there to be instructional videos for all of the games that they produce. And you know, I've had discussions with the boss of CGE. They want to support the people that buy their games. They pay, they have very good rule books. And I'm saying that as somebody who's not that involved in the CGE rule books, because they have a big team of people and their rule books are always really good. And they want to commission me to create videos. If that doesn't pay back, they don't think of that. They just think, we want the players to be able to go and watch a video for our games. Right. Other publishers will be thinking, Paul's going to charge us X to make a video. Are we going to see this many sales to pay for the video? And some of them say no. So some of them actually see it as, you know, as you say, it's marketing and everything else. It does depend on the publisher. Now, from my point of view, one of the things that I absolutely hate the most is being a salesman, right? I will work at a convention and I will do demos of games. And I absolutely love that. I will not work behind the sales booth, calling people over and saying, hi, would you like to do this? Being a used car salesman, no, right? Now, when I am doing my videos and when I'm demoing games at conventions, my entire philosophy is I'm teaching you how to play the game. At no point do I feel that I am marketing and I am helping sell the game. The reality is that I am, but I don't think about that at all. I am there literally to help you make a decision about whether it's the kind of game you like, or if you've bought the game, to teach you how to play. And that's my focus. If somebody said to me, I bought the game because of your video, it actually makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But as long as they say, you helped me realize this was a game I was going to like, so I went and bought it, fine. I'm happy with that. But I don't like the idea of, I don't know. Yeah, as I say, I'm not a salesman at all, even though I actually am.
But I think there's something to be said, though, for, like, I remember I used to, when I first started out gaming, I would be the person showing up with all the new stuff, going to the local game store. We'd play that night. And there was something that I kind of got, and believe me, I'm with you on the salesperson thing. I do not want to sell. That is not a goal. But I kind of would call it a very successful playthrough if the people who I was playing with went up and wanted to buy the game. Yeah. Like, to me, that's kind of like, they like the game as much as I do, enough to pull it in their collection is a little bit different than, just, you should buy this because there's only 5 left and then you won't be able to get it for a year. Right? I think that I think you're playing in a fun playground when you show people all the evidence and it's completely on them. It's not like there's even a link in your descriptions that say, go buy from here. Here's an affiliate link. Go, make me 10 cents for buying a copy. That's not even in there. So I don't
do that.
Right. It's so hard. And I'm sure for you, it's also got to be difficult with the whole Kickstarter preview and kind of let's call it the backlash that floats around the community and it seems to come and go. It's got to be hard to kind of stay out because let's be honest, that's some of the easy money in this business.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage that people like me and Rodney Smith have is that, well, first of all, I get lots of offers from people who've got games coming on Kickstarter who want to send me a copy of their game for me to review it before the Kickstarter goes live. And a lot of those come with an offer of money. I do not do Kickstarter reviews. I will only review games with my reviewer's hat on that have been out and are published and everything else. What I do is I do Kickstarter previews. So my definition of the word preview is something that comes out before the game is out. Okay. Let's go back to On Mars. I did a tutorial and playthrough video of On Mars before the game came out. I did it for the Kickstarter campaign. It was a tutorial and playthrough video. No opinions were given at all. It was purely instructional. And it was a preview because it came out before the game came out. And I was paid to do it because it took me, a very, very long time to create. Thankfully, the backlash that is out there about all paid previews for Kickstarters hasn't hit me much because the people who know that I'm doing purely instructional stuff. I will never give my opinions in those. They are not designed to persuade you one way or the other, even though, as I say, based on the discussions earlier on, they probably do.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, and Rado says it at least every couple months, it comes up where, what's the one thing if you were to go back and do it over again? He's like, I never would have turned the camera around and given my opinion. He's like, if I could just stay doing playthroughs and not having to worry about my opinion and the gravitas that may or may not carry, that's a pretty big distinction.
Well, I mean, this is a whole discussion for another time, but you're right. Sure. And Rado now does paid Kickstarter previews. Yep. Because he has to.
Yeah, and living in the US.
Advantage that, well, yeah, and the healthcare system for his mother and everything else. And I am totally with him. And I totally support him in that. And the advantage he's got is that people like me and you that have been watching him for years, we know what we're getting is absolute 100% honesty. So, and he always says it. He says, look, I was paid to do this video. I'm going to tell you what I think about the game. Bear in mind, I was paid to do it. But you know what's coming out of his mouth is exactly what would have come out of his mouth if he wasn't paid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, he's got publishers who are using him as a marketing tool, and he needs the money. He should absolutely charge for those. No problem with that at all.
Well, and even before the move and the shift to doing the Kickstarter previews, people were using him for marketing anyway. If it's on his list or it's he liked it. That, he never had an official program, a sticker, a badge to sell like, some of the other larger channels. But, he was most certainly getting a lot of attention and use that way. It makes sense that somebody should also get compensated for people using your brand that way when you're established
I would say
like that.
Yeah, he's probably up there with, Dice Tower, if not higher than Dice Tower in terms of an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a game that's coming out on Kickstarter, you want Rado to cover it because your campaign is going to do so much better if he's covered it. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up the Dice Tower because I don't really feel that it's an integrity issue. Like, I feel that things are pretty clear as far as who's doing what for what. Mm-hmm. I think as far as is the big players. I'm not talking about, the little startups, they might be in it for $1 or $2, but as far as the big players go, I think they are really trading on integrity. But what makes Rados different is I think it's only one voice, and it's one voice we've heard for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
I remember he taught me how to play Sulkin on a table in England, and it's
right.
It's funny to see like, hey, wait a sec, why is the background different? What changed? And, the kind of, he moved down to Malta. Now he's back, in the East Coast, West Coast. So it's kind of, there's a different connection and integrity. And I think you do the same thing, as far as you're very upfront, you're very clear and blunt about what you do and it's obvious that you put a lot of time and love into it.
Speaking of going back to the original question,
there was one
videos and and what's changed over the years. So was it last year now? I can't remember. I think it was last year. I think it was 2018. I bought some extra cameras.
Okay.
So I've been operating just on one camera for years, and then I bought 2 extra cameras, and I experimented for like 2 months with some kind of overhead mount.
Yep.
Then we rearranged things at home. I moved into the studio that now I am. This used to be our office. Everything went out of the office. This became the studio. I've got a ceiling mount up there with a 4K camera mounted into the ceiling. And suddenly I can do playthrough videos with multi-cameras and people. So one of the things I started doing last year was, instead of just the rules video of Paul teaches you how to play a game, but I'm actually going to do tutorial and playthrough video. So I'll get some friends round and we'll film it with multi-cameras. And then I'll use the overhead cam and I'll zoom in on that digitally in the edit. And I'll produce tutorial and playthrough. So it's another feather in my cap. It's another different way of creating videos. And then 2 months ago, probably the biggest change to my channel, our home internet got upgraded. So until 2 months ago, my upload speed, just go back and watch my live Q&A sessions prior to 2 months ago. It's this blocky, pixelated mess. My upload speed was terrible, absolutely terrible. And then 2 months ago, we found out we could get high-speed fiber broadband. So I applied for it, and we've done it. And suddenly my next live Q&A was like, oh, this is really good quality. And I can now upload videos in like an hour instead of 5 days. I used to have to go to the local library, which had super fast broadband.
Oh, wow.
And then the week after Gen Con, when I was sick, like really sick, I wasn't able to work at all, but I was stuck at home. I did something that I've been putting off for a while, and that is look into how I can actually do live streaming. And this is quite fortuitous, because if I hadn't have been sick, I'd have been working and I wouldn't have had the time to look into it. But because I was sick, I probably spent 3 hours a day researching it, speaking to people, Man versus Meeple, they were really helpful, and speaking to other people as well. And as of last month, I think it was, I can now live stream with a multi-camera setup. And I have done, 15 videos in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something.
Wow.
It's all live streaming. So yeah, the biggest change to my channel is I can now live stream with a multi-camera setup. And all of the ones that I've done so far have been me practicing, me getting used to it and everything else. But that's now a service which I'm going to be offering out to clients. This is why I've been sending lots of emails late at night. And I've got lots of people interested and lots of people booked in. The main advantage for me in that is a how to play video will take me 30 to 40 hours to create for a normal length video. Okay. A tutorial and playthrough that goes out live, where if the publisher is in the chat room at the time, and if I make some kind of big mistake, they can just pop on and say, "Oh, Paul, it's 3 points and not 1."
Right.
The amount of time it takes me is a lot less, significantly less. Therefore, I can be producing a lot more content. And I'm covering a lot more games. But the other thing is my personal enjoyment. I love teaching people how to play games. So whilst I enjoy creating the how to play videos, I'm having to write a script, I'm having to look at a teleprompter, I'm having to, whereas sitting down with my friends and teaching them how to play a game is a lot more enjoyable. So, yeah.
And I'd also argue when you take the stress of, there's a lot of stress in just talking by yourself to a camera and listening back to yourself and go, no, I didn't like the way I said that. But if you put people around you and make it very comfortable, if the flow and the cadence is so much different and easier, it's really incredible when you go from one media to the next.
Yeah. I mean, taking the key market video, for example, I did the first version of the key market video over the weekend. I sent it to Richard Breeze and David Brain, the designers. They've watched it yesterday. And they came back to me yesterday with a few points. And they said, "Here, Paul, we'd like you to just change this bit and add this bit in and do something else." Now, one of the bits, I re-recorded an extra bit of audio and managed to sneak it in.
Right.
Another bit, I was on camera at the time when I was recording it. There's no way that I can go back and re-record a whole new section.
Right.
I'll look different. Everything will just be different. So I've had to go back. Now, that's been 3 hours extra work, is going back and adding those things to it, because it wasn't perfect and the video's got to be perfect, which I want to create a good end product.
Sure.
But in those 3 hours, I could have live streamed another game with the designer in the chat saying, "Oh, don't forget, it costs 1 extra when you do." "Oh yeah, thanks very much." Because I've got a real big thing that everything I produce has to be accurate. And that's why I go to such lengths with my rules videos, scripting them, making sure the script gets approved by the publisher before I start filming it. I will fix any problems with it before it goes live. It gets checked, it gets double checked before it goes live. So the one that you see when it goes live on the channel is correct. And of course, the tutorial and playthroughs, there's always been this, when I'm filming it and then I'm editing it later, I'm like, well, what if I make a mistake?
Right.
Suddenly I've done a 3-hour video, I've sent it to the publisher and they've gone, "Oh, you got a rule wrong, and therefore your entire video is wrong." And that's happened to me once. And I've had to just get everybody round again, and we've had to do it all again. Whereas, as I say, going out live, you don't get that problem. As long as somebody's in there to correct any errors that you're making, it means that as a viewer, you're going to get it correct. Because although I might say the wrong thing, it will be corrected a couple of minutes later. So it's a lot less. I'm not saying I want the easy road. I'm just saying it's a lot less stressful, because I'm not worrying about, oh my God, I've got to get every single rule 100% correct. I've got to make sure I remember everything. I always try to do that anyway, but there's this safety net, and that does remove a lot of stress. Plus, I actually really enjoy the live streaming. I mean, I've only been doing it for, less than 2 months now, but I've done loads of them. And although some of my videos, there's only a few people in the chat, it's great. There's a few people in the chat that are actually there with me, playing the game and enjoying it and everything else. So yeah, very nervous when I started doing them, but yeah, live streaming of playing of games is the biggest change to my channel, and that's just been in the last couple of months.
Now, it's also, what I think is interesting about it is, one of the things I do for a living is I'm a corporate trainer. So like knowing different styles of learning, right? Like reading a rule book, that's kind of, I call it borderline audio-visual. Listening to you do a role is definitely like audio-visual as well. But then we also have but so many of us need to learn by doing. We really do. Like we need to shuffle things around. And I think that's the gap that live playthroughs and these sessions do. They fill and they hit that person who needs to shuffle bits and move things around because they might not be doing it, but they can certainly picture themselves doing it. And I think that's one of the big switches and benefits is now you're kind of covering all the different ways people learn now with, this wider approach. So I think that that's great.
I mean, the videos are longer. If you watch my full 3-player playthrough of Space Corp 2025 to 2300, whatever it is, it's 3 hours.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have time for a 3-hour video.
No.
But the people who want to watch the 3-hour video can watch the 3-hour video. And it's all there. And you're absolutely right. Now, obviously, you are professionally a corporate trainer. Professionally, I'm a games teacher, right? I teach people how to play games.
Absolutely.
But the percentage of people that learn best by doing, do you know what it is?
I know it's pretty high. It's probably in
It's very high.
Yeah, it's almost in the 50-60% range.
Yeah, I thought it was higher. I thought it was about the 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, "Oh no, I learn best by reading a rule book." And for them, it's probably because they sit and read a rule book on a Sunday afternoon in their quiet time, and that's how they learn best. But you're absolutely right. The majority of people learn best by actually doing, which is why when I demo a game, and I specifically use the word demo a game at a convention, I don't sit there and teach you every single rule of the game for 45 minutes and then walk away and let you play. That is not how you demo a game. That's how you teach a game. So at a convention, I will be demoing games as long as everybody goes into it going, this is a demo. We're here to work out whether this is a kind of game we're going to like. We're probably not going to play a full game of it. Off we go. And then when we start actually doing things,
push some buttons, turn some knobs, play with all the different things in the game that you might not normally do, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But you kind of want to show them the whole sandbox that they're getting to play in. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's exciting to see that, you're changing things and you're adapting and you're trying to make your life easier, in the process, because I think that's important, but it's also, it shows in your enjoyment of the work. Like I remember the video you did for escape plan comes to mind first, because you're like, we'll talk about that later, and you keep saying, I assure you we'll talk about that later. Later on you're like, no, I'm serious, we absolutely will talk about that later.
Yeah, that's become one of my catchphrases, so much so that a friend of mine has me saying, and I'll come back to that later on, as his ringtone, right? And the funny thing is, a lot of my local friends kind of rib me for it and say, "Oh, you're going to come back to that later on. Oh, you're going to come back to that later on." That I actually thought, hang on a minute, are they actually criticizing me here? Is it something that they find a problem? And they actually sat down and they said, no, it's absolutely right. What you do when you structure your videos, and when you say, and we'll come back to that later on, it's the right thing to do. Because if you'd have actually explained that, like with my example earlier on, explaining all 25 actions on page 2 of the rulebook, no. So although I seem to say it a lot, more so in some videos than others, I still believe it's absolutely the right thing to do, because you don't want to be interrupting the flow of the bit that you're actually doing right now with, oh, and by the way, something, and you go off at a tangent for 2 minutes. No, you've lost your train of thought on what you're doing earlier on. And in the Key Market video that I just finished editing, there's a bit in the game where you can retire your workers. And I mention near the start of the game, and I can say, oh, and you'll get points for retired workers. I then say, and I'll come on to how you retire workers later on, because I know some people are going to be watching it and going, what? Retired workers? You haven't mentioned retired workers. Right. And that's why I do it. That's why I put in the script.
Yeah, and they're going to get stuck running on that. It's the same person who goes, wait, what does this bit do in the middle?
Yeah.
Because they're fixated on the one thing that they're like, that's out of place for them. So you're kind of like, don't worry.
You've just mentioned something, and that's the first time you've mentioned it. So I must have missed something because you've clearly mentioned it before. So what I do is I sneak in those. I'll come back to this later on just to let you know as the viewer, oh, Paul's just dropped in a little bit of information, but he's going to explain it more later on. Right. And yeah, I remember the escape plan video. I did say it quite a lot in there. But that was a 45-minute video for a complex game. So,
which funny enough is probably one of Lada's more simple games. Vittles. Yeah, that's Vittel.
Vittles. Yeah, well, this is the interesting thing. And going back to the question of how has my channel changed over the years, when I did the video for Escape Plan and I sent it to Vittel for approval, I'm not going to say he went ballistic, but he said to me, he said, Paul, this is a 45-minute video. Nobody's going to watch this video. Your Lisboa one was 23 minutes. This game is a lot less complex. Why have you done it in 45? And so many people have said my Lisboa video is fantastic. And now I don't think my Lisboa video is good because I was still stuck in the mentality of I've got to make this video as short as possible.
Right.
Whereas now my whole objective is I'm going to make this video as clear as possible. And if that takes me 45 minutes, I'm going to take 45 minutes. The Lisboa one was very good, but I taught you all of the rules of Lisboa in about 23 minutes. But I felt that I should have spent a little bit more time on a few of the key points with some examples and here's why you would want to do this, rather than just saying you can do this, actually saying, now, here's why you would want to do this, which in Escape Plan I did. I, stretched a bit and I decided to explain a lot more detail of certain things, which is why the video is almost twice as long for a game that is less complex. But I felt more comfortable with the Escape Plan video than I did with the Lisboa video.
But I would argue you need to let people absorb and kind of let that breathe. So I think that, are you really saving somebody any time? Because they're going to have to watch the Lisboa video twice, whereas they probably only have to watch Escape Plan once. So
Possibly.
Really,
yeah.
You're not saving. Sorry, didn't mean to do that in English.
I did do all of the rules of Lisboa, but you're right. I didn't, and me saying, I didn't explain it well enough seems odd because I did. I explained the rules and I explained them correctly.
It was complete.
It's just I felt I should have gone into a bit more depth. But as I say, this is me keep tweaking, how I do things. But my rules videos now I'm really happy with. I think I go in, the one for Letter Jam, which is just gone up, was like 14 minutes, I think, 15 minutes. Right. The one for Key Market is 23 minutes. But I feel that they are the right length to explain that. And interestingly, David Brain, the designer of Key Market, complimented me on the length of the video. He said it would take me twice as long to explain that game. And I'm like, yeah, because when you're explaining it in person, it always takes longer. You're obviously going to get questions and everything else. But the thing is, I spent a day, I probably spent about 8 hours, maybe 10 hours, writing the script for Key Market beforehand. So again, going back to what we said at the start, planning. What am I going to say? When am I going to say it? Moving things around, structuring the script of the video so it's all precise in the right order. And that's why it's short and it's concise and it's all there. And if you're teaching in person, you're having to go off your memory and you might not be as structured and things like that. So yeah, I think my videos are the right length for what objective I'm trying to achieve with them.
Now, if you could go back in time and talk to 2016 Paul, and you could give him one piece of advice, what would you give yourself?
Oh gosh, there's probably lots.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots.
There's lots. The one thing I would definitely do is I would go back in time and say, don't work as hard as you have done or you are doing, because you're going to burn out and you're going to be ill, which has happened to me a few times in the last few years. But it's a very good question. You're kind of suggesting that because I'm much happier with the videos that I'm doing now, that I shouldn't have done the ones that I used to do. Especially all of that. I spent years learning that 3D software, how to do 3D rendering and animations and all that fancy stuff. I use none of that anymore. I don't use any of those skills anymore. And that was, months and months of learning to produce that stuff. You look at the adrenaline overview video that I did, and I had fancy gun effects, cameras panning around cards, coming up out of the table with glowing effects and everything. I don't know how to do that anymore. Was it a waste of time because I'm now not using those skills anymore? I don't know. I look back and I think it's just all part of my, I'm happy I did them. And when I look at the adrenaline overview video and I look at the Solkin video that I did, which was all full 3D rendered animations, I'm proud of those. I'm proud that I was able to create that, even though I no longer create them. So would I change it? Ooh, I don't know. Tricky one.
Interesting. Well, sir, this has been a lot of fun getting to know you and getting to know about your channel. If people want to find you on the internet, what are the best ways to do that?
There's a few. So there is the Facebook page, which is Gaming Rules Videos. Then there's Twitter, which was Gaming Rules Vids, because I did Facebook first. And then when I went to Twitter, it wouldn't allow Gaming Rules Videos because it was too long. So I'm Gaming Rules Vids on Twitter. I'm on Board Game Geek. I have a Board Game Geek Guild, which is 2258, which I always recommend people join and subscribe, because the problems with Facebook and Twitter is unless you're there at the time that I actually say something, you're going to miss it. Whereas on the Board Game Geek Guild, if you subscribe to it, it's there the next time you log in. So yeah, they are probably the main things. I have a website, but the website is out of date, and I need to do things with the website. The last video on the website is from like 9 months ago. I'm trying to get a plugin that will automatically get all of the videos from my YouTube channel and put them onto my website so that it's there. But
this should be a thing. Yes.
It should be a thing. Yeah, it should be a thing.
I'm sure it's around. Well, thank you so much for stopping in today. This is going to be a blast. We're going to have you back next week, and we're going to play a little game. Is that cool?
Okay, that's fine. No, thank you very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. Awesome.
So thank you for being on. Thank Dan for pouring a lovely beer this afternoon. Sorry we didn't get to talk to you at all, but we'll add it in post, I guess. So that's it. And be sure to read the rules the next time you game all night. Thanks for watching this week's episode. Join us next week when we play a game with the guest. If you enjoy our content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Be sure to follow us on all forms of social media. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are the best ways possible. Simply find us by searching for Game All Night Show. And of course, check out our website at gameallnightshow.com. This week and each week is made possible through the generous support of donors like these. Be sure to subscribe below and check out our latest videos.
Punchboard Media,
where we all
Bring something
to the table
pull up a chair.
at punchboardmedia.com.
Paul, are you drinking anything with us this evening? Hello? Paul? Paul? Is this thing on? Hello?